up TikTok too because I'll do another live here as well. I
did a
little pregame live on TikTok earlier.
Right on.
As well.
It's pregame if I'm right.
Right? All right. So that's gonna be going live.
Awesome.
I'd let everybody know whoever's gonna be partially watching on TikTok that they're just gonna see me and just hear me, so it's gonna be a little awkward, but whatever.
No, that's cool. Like, I'm all about this. Like, I think it's so great that you're doing this like live stream. So how exactly does this work? Like, people are just basically watching you through your live
right now.
You're live on TikTok right now.
Yes, if you go into TikTok and if you're on TikTok and you go find my account, you will see that I tap my profile and you'll see that I am live. No one's viewing it right now, but that's okay. And so yes, I am actively live on TikTok right now. And
that's badass.
If you go to my profile, you basically just see me. And that's all you see on the camera. It's me and this big phallic thing of a microphone sitting in my face while I'm talking to
you. So now I'm like, I've got to see how this all works.
Totally.
And so there's a part of me that's like, okay, let's go.
We're gonna be very meta right now. We're gonna be very
meta. Go. Let's go and check out JB the Jedi. I'm gonna click your live. Oh dang! So this is what this looks like.
Exactly. Right there.
That's awesome.
See?
That's so cool.
Hey everybody.
Yeah.
See, Ryan can even see me too. Or like it's like Inception. People aren't seeing here. I'll show. I'll confuse everybody. It's like Inception for live streams. So Ryan's showing us there. Oh, hold on. Where's my camera? There's the camera. So you can't see because it's a camera into a camera. It doesn't really work. But there you go.
That's so cool. Right on.
It's fun. You know, why not? We got this. We got the technology. Why not do it? It's a lot of fun.
No, that's really cool. I really like it a lot. Well, hey, like we have a really cool show tonight, but before we get into that, and I feel like we might want to start the show with this. I thought that I saw that Andor poster come out.
Oh, dude.
I thought that was pretty badass.
It was. There are so many layers to that poster. Matter of fact, so fun fact, speaking of TikTok, I actually, someone said hello from the East Coast. Hello. I posted that on TikTok, just a still image of it, with some music and me popping in and I didn't even talk. It went totally viral, like viral for me. Like my average posts get like 400 or 500 views on TikTok, which I am totally happy with. Every now and again, I'll get like 2,000, which also I'm very happy with. I went to bed and the thing had like 2,500. I was like, oh wow, people must really like this. I woke up in the morning to 14,000. I was like, wow. And then by now, I think it's sitting at like 17,500. I'm like, what the hell?
That is so cool, man.
And like so many comments on that image of people loving that poster. Like absolutely loving that poster. It is everything you have mentioned, everything I have mentioned, this like dystopian sort of feel to it. Yeah. I don't even know a better way to describe it, but it has that. And I really love the shaping, like the bringing back the shaping of the Galactic Senate and all the pods, and then sprinkling in the among the Imperial symbols, sprinkling in the rebellion, the Phoenix symbols in there. Oh, that is. One person said I think I saw one person make a comment, at least on my post, about how that was. They saw it as like how few people were in the rebellion. I'm like, I guess that's one way to see it. The way that I saw it was almost like the other way around, which is how few people it takes to create a rebellion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, I kind of saw it as like the spark that lights the flame, you know,
yes.
That I was about to try to like quote Poe Dameron, we're the spark that burns the fire that takes down the First Order. But in reality, like I really liked that whole setup. I actually I've always wondered about the Imperial symbol, you know, like how the Imperial symbol is built. And I've always thought like, oh gosh, you know, like where does that come from? You know, it's always been around. It's been around since like Empire. You know, you really see that Imperial symbol a lot. And I think it's in the original Star Wars too, but I think it's definitely been in there since Empire. And I've always thought like, man, like where does that come from? What does that look like? Where does it mean? And then you see, I love how it's the interpretation of the center of the Senate.
Yes.
That's I like that that's the effect of control, that the sign of liberty is the sign of their enslavement. You know?
Oh my gosh. The effect of control. That's a wild way to think about it. It's a variation popped up eventually as a variation on the Galactic Republic's symbol. So it's a derivation of the Galactic Republic symbol. But yes, you're right. Like
Yeah.
the whole poster, just as simple as that poster is, it has so many layers to it. It just really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. And before we get into the full show and the topic, I wanted to let everyone know on TikTok, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. You can't hear Ryan if you're watching on TikTok, but Ryan's here. He's right there. He's also over here.
Right there.
He's right there saying hi. If you want to see both of us and hear both sides of this conversation, not just me talking from the TikTok side, go to youtube.com/the Kessel chat, and you can catch us both live there too. But you can also stay here, whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
anyway, okay. That's enough for the TikToks. This is gonna be fun tonight. So we're getting into kind of the origins of Star Wars, and also like using industrial light and magic, and specifically the Light and Magic show or documentary series that's on Disney Plus as the way to get ourselves into this.
Yes.
I'm excited. I was actually rewatching. I watched the whole series like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, but I was rewatching the first episode again tonight to kind of get the pump primed again for us talking.
Right on. I'm really excited about that because I honestly, I've spent a lot of time. I haven't watched that documentary series, but what I did do was, of course, I read that story in SF Gate, which I loved.
Yeah.
But I have watched, I think, maybe countless hours of production, like background production movies, like background movies, documentaries on how things were made, up to and including like how Dagobah was set up, what was a practical effect, what wasn't a practical effect, things like they used to do this to get a lot of things. They did this optical rotoscoping, which of course you would know about, and many other fans know about how optical rotoscoping works, which is basically like all these old, I'm going to date myself, but like it's like photography tricks that you learn when you're like when I was in high school, and you took like a photography class and you learned about developing film and how you could, and that's where like you get these. There are scenes, like especially if you can get your hands on an old copy of the original trilogy, you'll see just like the grit. You'll see like things like these things that are left in the gate. Oh, we're jumping into it.
No, sorry, I hit the wrong key. I apologize.
Oh, no,
You're good.
okay.
Keep going. I hit the wrong key for sure.
So there's like there's an old phrase anytime you're like using in like movie sets, which is cut, check the gate, and if the gate is clear, and the gate is basically this like tiny little glass window that's between the lens and whatever action's taking place, and if there's a hair or something in the gate, then you got to retake the shot, like the shot doesn't count. And so it's cut, check the gate, and if the gate's clear, moving on. That's how like production works. And because they were having to handle all of that film stock, ILM back in those days was having to handle it by hand. It's amazing that it isn't filled with more little pocks, dirt, little bits of fuzz. I mean, the smallest little bit of fuzz from your shirt is going to look as the size of a Star Destroyer on the film. And so, yeah, this is just like, it's just definitely something that's really cool. I can't wait to talk about this because not only was this story really great, and it really caught up on the thing you talked about last week, Jeff, which was about my myth of the AT-AT. And and that's actually what got me into this and got me into this story, and it's why I'm so happy to talk about this. So we can jump in the show and like
let's
talk about this.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Maybe. My buttons work. There we go.
Boom.
There we are.
Hey!
Excellent.
Good deal.
Love it. We're here. This is gonna be a fun show tonight. I'm really excited.
I have to say something, Jeff. Like, one, your background, it looks awesome. Like,
Thank
Jeff's background only ever gets better. My background, I don't have my Star Wars stuff up. I think I have the Black Lion somewhere behind me, maybe.
You do?
There he is.
Yes.
And which is my 1980s like die-cast metal Black Lion. And
that's your Voltron lion, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yep. But I got my like sick cactus here.
I mean,
and I'm like, come on, sick cactus. Like, he's just not doing well. And I gotta work on my background is what I'm saying. Because it's like, people don't know this, and Jeff knows this, but I'm like a huge, like, it's like Star Wars and gardening. Like, these are the things that I love. and I can't see. I have a problem because anytime I go to like a plant store or something, Jeff, I always like pick up some sick plant that I'm like, I can fix you. Like, let me take you back and I'll work on it. And, it's always bad, but yeah, I got to work on that cactus and my background for that matter.
No, dude, your background's good. I love the way the lights are set up on your back, so they like glow against the wall. It's really cool.
Oh,
It has it really needed. Well, and tonight especially, it's like totally matching with your shirt. Like this, like salmon colored shirt is like, I think that's salmon. I'm not really sure, but it looks really good with the whole room.
Hey, thank you. Well, I think that we should throw it over to you, Jeff. You should talk about your shirt because your shirt's pretty badass.
This is super cool. So there's there's a person I follow on Twitter and TikTok and places, and they posted someplace about this new shirt or some new stuff merch they had. I don't know where I came across it. One of these social channels, and I went and looked at it, and sure enough, it had this look of like a sports jersey. I'm like, oh well, I have to get it. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of hidden a little bit, but So Sabres, like a sports baseball team or something. Lena So is the name of the chancellor in the Galactic Republic during the High Republic. So the symbol on the side, that is the symbol for the High Republic. I'm not going to turn around entirely, but it says Jedi, 00 on the back. So it's just really cool. I like to support like fandom-based creators who do these things, and you get cool swag or digs out of it. I'm totally on board with that. It's pretty cool.
Oh no, I think it's badass. I love that. I don't want to put this on you, Jeff, because I know that we all have our setups and you've got like earphones and everything, but on the back of it, it says across the shoulders Jedi, and then it's 00. It looks like a really cool like soccer kit. I think it's awesome.
It is super comfy. Like I'm kind of surprised sometimes when I get shirts like this that sometimes they're okay quality, they're like mediocre. Other times they're really, really good. And this one is really good. It's very soft. The person who had it made, whatever vendor they're using, did a really good job with it. So yeah, no, I dig it.
That's why we do the Kessel chat is for the merch.
That's it. So it's the only. This is. I mean, I'm sorry, everyone who's watching. We do not do it for you. We just do it for
the merch. It's
just for the merch.
Send us merch. We want your swag. We will wear it on the show.
Oh yes, we have no shame. You just load the drip, and we will just go to town. This is no problem at all.
Deal. But this has been like a great. Speaking of the show, though, this has been like a great week for our show. Two big things: we have our own URL on YouTube, and we also we also crossed a milestone. Jeff, you have the news on that.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool! So we hit two big milestones, which is super rad. We broke 100 subscribers on YouTube, which is awesome. So I mean, just in general, it's a really cool feeling. So yay! And then more specifically, by crossing 100 subscribers, we were able to get a custom URL. So now it's actually just youtube.com/thekesselchat. So it's a lot easier for anyone to find who's going to look for the content. And we crossed 30,000 views of the channel, which is just mind-blowing that that's even a thing. So for everyone watching,
cool.
Team Replay, Team Live, whatever you are, thank you so much for watching and being here with us. It has been, like you said, Ryan, when we were tweeting about this, it is started with I just want to talk about Star Wars, and then messaging Ryan like, dude, you want to do some Star Wars stuff? Hey, how about we just hang out every week and talk Star Wars for an hour? And about a year and a half later, we're still doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I will say that big kudos to Jeff for it's always the wild ones that take the brave ones that take that first step. And I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Jeff. So I'm excited, especially because we have a cool topic tonight.
Yes.
And every week we're able to come in and have a really cool topic. Mm-hmm. Before we start, if I can I've got a question for you, but I've got a technical question, which is typically before we start, we always make sure sound checks everything else. My mic seems to be like lighting up. I hope I'm not coming off as tinny right now, or like. Nope. It doesn't. Okay, excellent.
No, you're good. I actually have your volume up a little bit because you were a little quiet when we first started, so I turned your volume up a tiny bit on our side. But no, you're good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I'd love to kind of kick this off. And for anybody that wasn't listening to the show last week, so last week we had kind of a open Q&A, and Jeff had this great question, and the question was, what is the relation of the the big like shipping cranes that are right outside of the bay, right, like as you take the Bay Bridge from Oakland to San Francisco. There's these big like white cranes that have 4 legs and a big neck, and it looks like a big like skeleton of like some big animal, like an oliphant or
It's
something.
like a camel or something. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. It's
Yeah.
really big, and ever since I was a little kid, every time we'd cross the Bay Bridge, anyone that was in the car would say, "Hey, you see that, Ryan? That is what they designed the AT-ATs from."
Mm-hmm.
And it's everyone say the same thing. Well, George Lucas, he lives up here, and he moved to Marin County, and so he takes the Bay Bridge all the time, and the people at ILM take the Bay Bridge all the time, and they saw that, and that's what inspired the AT-AT. And all of my life I've thought that, like, just as many documentaries as I've watched, as much Star Wars knowledge as I know about, like, how they made blaster bolts by like just hitting like a metal wire and hearing that ping, like and I didn't know this. Jeff, you know the real reason why. Where did they actually get the AT-AT from?
It is such a cool story, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's a really good lead into what we're going to talk about in bulk tonight. But for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, right there at the top on Disney Plus, Light and Magic is a documentary miniseries, hour-long episodes, give or take, and it's all about the birth of, or the origins of, Star Wars and how ILM got created and where they're at now. And in one of those episodes, they talk about how the AT-AT or the AT-AT, whatever your preference is, how it got created. And is it Joe Johnston? Hold on, I actually just had his name up a second ago. Joe Johnston, who was one of the original group of outsiders, so to speak. We'll get to that in a minute. Who were the first people to create what became ILM. He did storyboards. His main job was to do storyboards, and so he was trying to figure out a way to do designing. Ralph McCordy had done some stuff, and somebody had come to him. I think Phil, I forget what his last name is, came to him and said. Phil, not Phil Tippett. No, one of the other people came to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Someone came to him and said, "Here's what we want. Oh, this is what we're looking for." And the initial thing was, we need this like mechanical type thing, sort of like a tank, but we don't want it to look like a tank. Okay, cool. So I'll get some sketches going. And then the person said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I've talked to the Norwegian military, and they're willing to let us. They've let us borrow a tank. Can you design something to go on the outside of the tank to kind of that will become what we'll end up calling the AT-AT or whatever this thing is going to be? But we don't want it to look like a tank." And he goes, "Okay, cool. But if there's treads, it's always going to look like a tank. Like, I can cover it as much as you want, but if you see treads, you're going to know it's a tank." And so they were trying to come up with another way to do this that didn't look like a tank. And in it, he talks about this thing from U.S. Steel. That was a book, and I had the notes someplace. It was an art book. It was a concept art book from the 1970s, probably even before that had all these futuristic, like Ralph McCordy style paintings in it about what the future could be like when you use steel to do all these very interesting and cool things. And in it, on it was a book that anybody could get. You could just call them or write a letter to them, and they would just send it to you. Just a book you could have, and so everybody in ILM had it up on their walls because it was great inspiration. And in it, on one of the pages, is a big tank-like 4-legged structure that is walking through snow in a forest. And as soon as Joe Johnston saw that, he goes, "That's it. It's a painting in a book from U.S. Steel." And he took it. If you go look up the thing, it's like a boxy thing with 4 legs. And as he was looking, he's like, "This is it. We need something that is anthropomorphic, that looks like an animal or like a real creature." And so they designed it. Literally, the design came from this book from U.S. Steel that they then took and inspired and modified. And then they even put the reason it has a head on it that moves is because they wanted something anthropomorphic that looked like a creature. And the reason for the head comes from, separately, an image they found of a dinosaur that lived in like the Mesozoic era that looks kind of like a pig, but super tall, that could climb up tree or like put its paws in trees and eat things with a little bit of a snout. And they're like, ooh, wouldn't it be creepy if there was a head on this with gun emplacements? So when it walks, it isn't just walking straight. You can walk past it. It can turn and look at you and still shoot at you. There's something intimidating about that. And so that is literally where the design came from. It was not the things in, because I heard the exact same story you had. And when I first moved to the Bay Area and I drove through Oakland and Alameda area, and I'm like, oh, that's clearly, my wife even said it to me. That's what they're designed after.
For the AT-ATs. That's
and
the
it's,
AT-ATs.
it is absolutely not even true. That's not where it comes from at all. As a matter of fact, the original designs for it were designed before the ILM and Lucas ever moved to the Bay Area. It was happened back when ILM was first created, which was in Van Nuys, in a building right next to the Van Nuys airport. That's where ILM started. That's where these group of people came in. That's where the initial ideas came through. Even though they did end up moving up, some of these ideas actually came from that original studio. But yeah, it's actually a much more interesting story when you hear it. Like, wow, like, not that the one in the Bay Area is not cool, because you see it and you're like, that is fantastic inspiration. But to hear this is like, oh, that's another really cool story to hear too.
Yeah. Oh no, I think that Star Wars, they always say that if you want to be great, just hide your sources. It's just sometimes genius is just creative plagiarism, or well hidden plagiarism, and I always think about how
inspired by.
Exactly, and I always think about how you look at Coruscant. And Coruscant is all Art Deco. I mean, Coruscant is the Chrysler Building in New York City. I mean, Coruscant looks just like, especially the higher ups. Like, I'm not talking about to use a Game of Thrones parlance, the flea bottom parts of Coruscant. But that there's a lot of, you get a little bit of the mega cities. You can get a little bit of the, there's a French comic book artist named Mobius. He did I think I've got it around here somewhere. He did the Inkle. He also did he's done a lot of Jodorowsky artwork, and you can see that artwork inspired a little bit of Coruscant. You can see that Naboo, Theed, the capital city Theed, really inspired by Venice. It's was designed, and even in the documentaries they talk about how we're building a futuristic Venice. And even when in episode 2, when Anakin and Padme are in the gondola, that was built also like that. They filmed at the Spanish what is it, Caserta or Caserta throne and palace. I mean, they knew the things that they wanted to borrow, and then they just put their kind of spin on it to give it that galaxy from far, far away, which, by the way, like, always makes sense to me when you use it. Like the great thing about this story about Industrial Light and Magic, and you even talk about it by talking about how the AT-ATs themselves are kind of built like animals, is that it's important that we all recognize what a thing is. Luke Skywalker's speeder doesn't have wheels, but I know that thing's like a transport convey, like it's built to move him from A to B, and symmetry is a thing that ILM always did well on. There's a handful of things that are non-symmetrical, like the Millennium Falcon, but even though the majority of it really is symmetrical, but you look at an X-Wing, it's symmetrical. A TIE fighter, it's symmetrical. They really optimize symmetry in all of their design, and it's because it's a pleasing vision to humans. Like we look for symmetry. That's why, like, the what is it? The Pontiac Aztec. That thing failed because that thing is not just, it's got a problem with symmetry. It's got too many lights on it. So it looks like that car Homer Simpson designed.
Oh my God, yes. Like, cup holders everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Like it doesn't, it's a terrible design. And it's user experience before user experience was a thing. It's design experience before design experience was the thing. That's what ILM is. But you've been watching this documentary series, and I'd love for you to kind of give a primer on what you've learned and what you like about this series so far.
Absolutely. There's two quotes I'll give you, and I may be paraphrasing both of the quotes a little bit. So I apologize to anyone who's watched it and has these down pat. But the first quote is, from George Lucas, as soon as the documentary opens, he says, movies are special effects. First thing he says, movies are special effects. The experience that is made in a movie is done through visual effects. Yes, are there movies that heavily focus on dialogue? And that's the point of the movie. And the visual things are not so important as the dialogue, or that's what they're trying to convince you, yes. But his point is more of, it's what we see in the visual medium that makes us want to continue to watch these things in a visual medium. Because otherwise, even with great dialogue, you could read this. Movies are the special effects. They just are, and they always have been. That's a really good quote. I love it because it really does give you a better idea of not just the practical genesis of ILM, but the reason why what ILM does is so important to the movies and the things that are told in Hollywood. The second quote I think that is also very telling in a very different way. So Joe Johnston was one of the original people that was hired on to create what became ILM. And when John Dykstra called him, or not John Dykstra, but somebody else called him who knew him from Cal State Long Beach, from the industrial design program at Cal State Long Beach, which is what John Dykstra went through at Cal State Long Beach before he got his degree and then left and then got hired on by Lucas, called by Lucas and someone else. Joe Johnston was one of the other people. He went through the program a couple years after John Dykstra, a couple years younger, didn't graduate, was going to go off to do something. And when he got called by a mutual friend, which is how this whole thing played out, to say, come here, come interview, we want you to do this. And when he got there to interview, John Dykstra said, so you can do storyboards, right? And he goes, oh yeah, totally. He goes, okay, good, because that's what we need you for. We need to do storyboards. Yeah, I got 100%. And then the very next thing he says in the documentary is, I had no idea what a storyboard was. He goes, but I wasn't about to tell them that because I needed a job. So I got a job and I had to go learn what storyboards were. And I love that because these are guys in their 70s. I love it because it prefaces the nature of what all of these individual people were doing in their own lives at that time. The tinkerer and maker nature of each of these individual people that was necessary in the recipe to create what amounted to curry. Like a bunch of things you put, I'm not saying a curry is a mishmash of things. I'm just saying that a bunch of things have to come together in a certain way to make something really good, but they don't always have to be the exact same things. You just need the right types of things that can work well together to create this result. And the crew that was brought together, they refer to them as the gang of outsiders. Actually, Lucas literally says that, like in the very beginning of the documentary. The title of the first episode, I believe, is called Gang of Outsiders. Because these were all people who were doing visual effects in some kind of way, but for TV shows or commercials or all these different things, but they all knew each other. He actually refers to them as like a cabal, jokingly, because they all were friends of friends. They all knew each other and tinkered on the side and made claymation or stop motion animation and things on the side, but they weren't the big names. They were just bunch of guys who did these things. And when they came together, that was a recipe for what was necessary, which was experimentation to get to a place. So yeah, that's the preface, like the primer I would give anybody that's what this series is really all about. Is it's actually not that much about Star Wars. The first couple of episodes are about Star Wars, but very quickly it starts going into all of the other things that ILM began to do, in part to then be able to make Star Wars. That is one thing that is described by, not Phil Tippett. What is his name? Sorry, I'm going to go back and find his name because I'm going to blank on it, and I think it's important. Is
Dennis
Muran. Dennis Muran. So one of the people I don't know if he's still with ILM, but he was he became one of the main directors of ILM for a long, long time. One of the most prominent people. He talks about how what was my thought? Sorry, I lost my thought there for a sec.
Just being just the stuff that they had to do to just get ready to get to Star Wars.
Yeah, sorry, thank you for that. So even after they made the first couple of Star Wars movies and they got through that, what ended up happening is there was such a gap between the third Star Wars movie, between Return of the Jedi release order, and when they started making the next one. And Lucas knew that he wanted to make this next movie, but he was like, I don't know how. There's no technology to do this. And so he kind of instructed Dennis and others, like, well, let's go. Spielberg needs something. He's making something. Spielberg needs some help with something. All right, let's jump in and see what we can do to help him with that. And then what came after that was like, well, Jim Cameron needs help with this other movie, like The Abyss. And then so-and-so needs help with this other movie. And what they were having conversations of is, let's go do these others, because as we're doing these and coming up with things that have never, like for The Abyss, there's a whole section in one of the episodes that's all about The Abyss. That's all ILM. If anyone didn't know, that's all ILM. Jurassic Park, ILM. Titanic, ILM. Like all of these movies people don't think about were all done by ILM. They did those in part as a way to use the money and essentially to build the things they need to build for those movies as a way to iterate what they were already trying to do to get ready to come back and make Star Wars later, to make more Star Wars movies later. So it was almost like experimentation that had a great result for the movies they produced or they helped create for these famous directors like Spielberg and Cameron and really, others like that. But in the end, what they were really trying to accomplish is to get back to George. Okay, I think we're now ready to go make the movie you want to make later on, which is surreal to think about, but also pretty amazing that this isn't just a business that was created to do special effects. It was created to solve a set of problems, and they just kind of almost stumbled into it for a long time, decades.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it was a lot of like learning by doing, which was like pretty amazing because you were talking about them being a group of outsiders. And I mean, isn't that always disruptors?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's never the people that are inside of something. Even now, I mean, like I was just thinking about how there's always someone that's on the edge of something that's like starting to disrupt it or like, change it or make it different. And it's like, it's people doing podcasts, it's people doing YouTube, it's all these things that have disrupted stuff like how we go and view movies or how we engage with content. And if someone would have told you 15 years ago, unless you were watching Demolition Man, which Demolition Man has totally predicted almost everything in the future, so just throwing that out there, like if you want to know how the future is going to play out, watch the Sylvester Stallone, Sandra Bullock, Wesley Snipes, magnum opus of Demolition Man, because they caught this. If someone had told you 15 or 20 years ago that people would watch 10-second reels of someone making something that's referencing something and that people would love that, you'd be like, no, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. 10 seconds, 15 seconds. What are you talking about?
That's right. In Demolition Man, when you listen to the radio, there was no music that was played. They were all commercials. It was all jingle. That's right. It was jingles. It was all. They're like, "Where's the music?" Well, we don't listen to music anymore. It's just jingles.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, if you want to know the future, it's Demolition Man. Up to and including, they don't have any contact. When they do a high five, they do that. And it's, I
will say though, we do still use toilet paper. We don't have the 3 seashells. Thank whatever gods exist. Thank that, because I don't even want to know what the 3 seashells are supposed to do.
I'm telling you right now, man, that we're almost going to we are getting to peak 3 seashell, because just let climate change take it a little bit further. And then someone's going to be like, you know what? I got an idea. 3 seashells.
There's these seashells. You see?
Yeah. But my point is that it's all of these like disruptors that are out there that were doing this. And I remember one of the early ILM documentaries that I watched. One of the things that they talked about is that a lot of the effects that you saw, especially like planes like flying and things like that, it was often a thing on a string. And so they spent a lot of time hiding the string, like a ship. It was an innovative thing to be like, well, how can we do motion tracking with the camera itself? And that's also gave cause for computer guided motion tracking, because of the fact that what they would have to do is several takes of the same thing, so that way they could get the overlay for lighting, they could
Mhm.
get the overlay for effects, they could get all of these things. And that's why you can see a little bit of that in like the early 1966 Star Trek. If Rich is listening, that's your Star Trek reference. And 1966 Star Trek, they have a little bit of that, but of course they had to light the Enterprise up from the inside. They couldn't do any effects had to be painted on through rotoscoping. So when they do like proximity blasts or phasers in 1966, it's all these like these rotoscoping, like it's really like
Mhm.
someone literally drawing on the film cell. And Star Wars is doing that in 1974, 1975, 1976 as they're starting to get ready, as ILM's starting to get ready, to your point. They're learning a lot. They're learning from the past, but they're always pushing the medium forward. And what's great is they change everything with Star Wars. Everything becomes like, how do we make things as good as this? In some cases, where you have something like Alien by Ridley Scott, or Blade Runner, or Star Trek, the motion picture, which were like, whoa, like eye-poppingly awesome. And then you have like, how do we just try to capitalize this and make money? And then
Mhm.
that's like Star Crash and all these other like terrible movies that are
Yeah.
just like terrible.
Mhm.
But yeah, like they invent all this stuff, and they just jump light years from where things were to where things become. And then it's like they're constant. To George Lucas's credit, he's never resting on his laurels. He's always asking them, what's the next thing we can do? What's the next
Mhm.
thing we can do? And I like that it's idea led. It's not just like, let's just do crazy shit. It's like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Let's for a story, let's push it forward.
The thing you just talked about, where on the things on strings, there's a section in the documentary where they show when they finally get to the place, the camera following and panning thing that they get, where they have a rig set up where an X-wing and a TIE fighter, or an X-wing can be flying this way, or Millennium Falcon, really, where the Millennium Falcon is coming this way, and it's moving while the camera also moves past it to create that effect. To your point, you can see a direct connection when you watch that between what they did there and what they do with the volume for The Mandalorian and other shows that are using the volume to make the show. And if
Yeah.
anyone who's watching is not familiar, the volume is the name of the structure that was built by ILM that is all LED screens, that is the primary thing that The Mandalorian and most modern Star Wars things and other content now is filmed within. It's a big, huge room that's like 35, 40 feet tall, 60, 70 feet across, all LED screens that where the whole set can be projected on there. Not projected, but displayed. And then it can track in real time. Obi-Wan was filmed using this, where the camera and the background can be set so that the background moves with the camera, so that the camera can move around a physical set inside and around actors while the background moves at the same rate, so that you can be on set without physically having to be in real life set. And you can see a direct connection when you watch this documentary between things
Yeah.
they developed for Star Wars in this and what they're using now. Yes, is it more high tech and all that? Of course, but you can see that there's a clear through line from those things back then to what they do now, because the lessons had to be learned to get to this point, which is amazing to watch.
Oh yeah, like I mean, they're always advancing the medium, even when maybe what they're trying to do isn't successful. Like, I was just watching Jaws, and I don't think ILM worked on Jaws because it wasn't around then. It's 1974, and I was looking at Bruce, which is the shark, and when I was a kid, I used to be like, man, that shark's scary. And then even when I was older, I was like, this shark is still scary. And now I'm looking at that shark, and I'm like, man, that shark looks like it's falling apart. And then you watch. I showed my kids. I showed my kids Jurassic Park, or I showed some of my kids Jurassic Park because I don't want to deal with a ton of nightmares. And my kids were like blown away by this. This is a movie that came out in 1994. Um, it's an amazing film, and it stands up. The effects stand up, and they advance that. Then you look at something like Titanic. Titanic's a 4 hour movie, or almost 4 hour movie. It's got 900 special effects shots in it. So now they've advanced. They, like, Star Wars took all the things like practical effects, makeup, special effects, rotoscoping, all these things, and that becomes the standard. That's how you get stuff like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. That's how you get Alien and Aliens. and Alien 3 even. You get all of these things that come out of Star Wars in 1977. Then 1999 rolls around and boom, you get episode 1. And Titanic has 900 shots. Episode 1 has 2,000 special effects shots and Jar Jar Binks, which, good, bad, or otherwise, Jar Jar Binks is a triumph in that it is a fully digital character, and then suddenly that becomes the thing. Suddenly blue screen becomes the thing. Before, when they were doing blue screen, 1979's Superman, the motion picture Superman, the original Christopher Reeve, they were starting to experiment with that, all because of ILM. Now they're taking it to another level with episode 1. And by the way, I brought up Jar Jar Binks again. I still am a big proponent of, give me a new Jar Jar Binks show, Serious Binks. I keep bringing it up. I'm a believer in that. That is a great idea for a show. Serious Binks, NCIS Binks.
Oh,
Law and Order Binks.
Detective Binks. I still want it to be a film noir,
Binks.
like very film noir style. Like,
super serious. It's not a joke. He's like, I'm grown up now, everybody. It's been 20 years. Like, I'm a serious person now. I've got, debt and kids and like a house, and I've now got to get a job, and it's Serious Binks again. But my point is that there's a diversion there. The point is that they're always advancing the technology. You don't get 300 without episode 1. Then in episode 2, they're doing the digital film. You don't get all of these movies that come after that. You don't get the digital tools that we have without the prequels. John Knoll, who worked on the prequels, also came up with the idea for Rogue One. He is one of the co-creators of Photoshop. They literally invented the technology that we use now all the time for this kind of stuff. So it's like they were always advancing it. And like what you just said, and now with The Mandalorian and building that digital set, they're always advancing the technology. It's like great artists always advance the medium. They're doing that.
Absolutely. And Joanna, thank you for being here, by the way. We appreciate it. It's so good to see you. We miss you. The documentary series is called Light and Magic, and it's all about the birth and development of ILM. Starts about Star Wars a little bit, but it really just covers like what ILM is, who they are, and the impact they've had on Hollywood just in general. Which is really
also fun. Just side note, also really good to see Joanna. I also think that we should call our show. I keep bringing up Thorns and Horns, Rose and Bull. I think Lemon and Tangerine also works.
See,
I'm all about it. Still a big believer in Thorns and Horns.
That could just be like our rant desk day. Today we're going to the rant desk. It's Thorns and Horns. Let's do this.
Again,
I love it. See, you know what you need to do? You need to start getting really prolific on TikTok so that you can get to 1,000. So we can do Thorns and Horns over on TikTok. See,
I'm all about that.
That could be could be the pre or the post show. No, we're not doing a post show. Sorry, we're not doing a post show ever because it's 10 o'clock by the time post show hits for us. We're not doing that. Our families would kill us.
But to your point about all this stuff, they're always advancing the medium. They're always pushing it forward, even with the latest sequel movies. You know what was great was there was the renaissance of the practical effects. That came from The Force Awakens. The big masks, all the stuff that was done with makeup, the balance. Finally we get a balance of digital effects and practical effects, and that comes from The Force Awakens, where it's like the best of both worlds. I feel like they've really done a great job getting
and I think I don't know this for fact, but I will take a guess that companies like Weta Workshop were heavily inspired by the work that ILM does, because Weta Workshop is a behemoth in their own right. Like,
you are reading my mind. I was going to say you don't get Weta Workshop. You don't get the Lord of the Rings without
100%. This is terrible math, but 1,000% agree. This is terrible math. If anyone's watching and has not seen the Lord of the Rings movies that Peter Jackson did, whether from a lore perspective and all that, whether you're a fan, put those things aside. Go, if you watch them, and then more importantly, go watch the behind the scenes DVDs from the movies. I say DVDs. Just watch them behind the scenes if you buy them on wherever you buy them because they're available. When you watch to your point, the amount of practical effects that is very well balanced with the special effects or the visual effects used in, blue screen bigatures and things like this, there is such a great balance. And Weta did a beautiful job in that. I know we're here to talk about ILM, but Weta did a beautiful job finding a rhythm, I won't even say a balance, but finding a really beautiful rhythm between practical effects, miniatures and bigatures, and then actual visual effects to create something that feels like this is just real. Like everything you see in that movie feels like, none of it feels like a special effect. Everything in that movie feels real. Like this is a real place. You could go ride a horse. You could ride up to Orthanc, and just there's Orthanc, and you could just ride right up to it and touch it. Like it was because of the use of the mix of these different types of effects that a company like Weta gets inspired, because the people who run Weta, relatively speaking, are much younger. Even the owners, Richard, whatever his last name, I think it's Richard, one of the founders of it, they're much, much younger than the people from ILM. They learn by seeing, oh my gosh, this is the stuff you can do. I want to go do that too. And then you get something like Weta, which has done beautifully. Like I've said beautiful like 100 times. Like everything they make in different movies is just amazing. And you get, like you said, you get that because of the boundaries that ILM has been pushing for decades.
Yeah, and they're still doing it. Like, I mean, I feel like some groups, Pixar, I feel like some groups lose their way a little bit sometimes.
Sure.
And then what they end up doing, Apple, is they reiterate on top of a thing that they've had, and it's their job. They'll lose their disruptor ways. And if there's a thing that ILM has just not stopped doing is they are that level of inspiration. And I would say that Weta, which was I think originally inspired by them, has really taken it to the next level. But again, you don't get Gollum without Jar Jar Binks.
You don't have somebody like Andy Serkis pushing the boundaries of something that was nascent. Motion capture was a thing that happened, but you don't get what we have today without somebody like Andy Serkis and Weta and groups like that saying, hey, I think we can push this. I think we can do something else here. I mean, the Planet of the Apes movies, for good or bad, like whether you like them or not, doing those characters like Andy Serkis did, and then doing Golem, and then doing Snoke, there's a ton of time between those two things, but Andy Serkis has, with Weta and others being inspired by LM, where it felt like they could go do this, and they created this whole world of motion capture that, realistically speaking, did not exist that way before. People were doing it, but not in the ways that we now see are capable in movies. And it all comes from people who are willing to just try something for the sake of trying something.
Yeah, and sometimes trying and failing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there are risks. There are risks because some of the things that they like a really good try and success and try and fail is Dagobah and Yoda in Empire is a try and success, which is, if you really take a look at how big, if you get lost in that set, by to ILM's credit, that's not a big set. That set might be as big as my the inside of my family room. That's not a big set, and they make it seem spacious. They make it seem so big. And Mark Hamill is the only person on the call sheet for months. He's showing up to act against a robot and a puppet. And those are my favorite scenes of all Star Wars of all time. To this day, I tell my children, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Those sequences are great. There is a limited amount of special effects, but even the ones that are there, like when Luke goes into the cave, and his lightsaber, it's a slow motion sequence that they had to rotoscope those lightsabers on. I don't think people realize how crazy hard that is to make the lightsaber look consistent. That's why if you ever watch it now, you'll notice that the lightsaber has a little bit more bubbling effect around it. And the reason is because it's on a slow motion. So it's not moving as fast, so you don't get as much of the whipping. But even when the whip happens, and when you have to give it the longer white middle of a lightsaber, oh my gosh, like those are great effects, and it's all setting the mood. It doesn't get in the way of the storytelling. Versus try and fail is some of the stuff that they did in episode 2, where although it's really great, I had never heard the phrase uncanny valley until I watched episode 2. And then I was like, oh yeah, like that stuff's a little bit too real to be real. Some of it works really well. Some of it Camino works amazing, but that's because Camino looks like an Apple store. Before an Apple store
It really does.
I think again, I feel like Steve Jobs watched Demolition Man and episode 2 and was like, that's the future of Apple. Again, watch Demolition Man. It is everything that Apple does.
It's hilarious. It is. Yeah, there is a scene. I will say, sorry, one tangent. There is a scene in Demolition Man that I don't think you can find in the movie anymore, but it was in the original cut of the movie in the theater. And then when it first released, there's a scene when they go down into the underground, and when he first encounters Dennis Leary's character. And they walk by, and there's a stand, and he gets a burger, and he's like, "Oh my god, a burger!" So and the person says, "That's a rat burger," and he goes, "Best damn rat burger I've ever had." That's not in the movie now at all.
No.
It was originally, and every time I've seen it since, I'm like, that they cut that part out. It's a great line.
Yeah, no, they have restored that.
Oh, they have
again. Yeah, I look. I'm gonna keep talking about the Bing show that I want to do, but I really do. I'm not joking around. If you want to see the future of humanity, we are getting there. It is Demolition Man.
Taco Bell is going to be the thing, apparently. Sorry, everybody.
Taco Bell is going to be the thing. I hope they're going to win the fast food wars. Actual verbiage from Demolition Man. But my point about this is that they try and they fail. They try and they succeed, but they're never stopping. Weta does the same thing, and if you really want to see some comparative examples of really brilliant special effects that don't get in the way of your enjoyment, and then those that do, all you have to do is watch the Star Trek series. Star Treks 1 through 4, all ILM, and it's some of the best visual special effects you'll ever see. Oscar-winning visual special effects, and also some amazing scores, musical scores. I can't discount those. Then Star Trek 5 rolls around. ILM's busy because they're working on a bunch of different stuff. Like they're working on Jurassic Park, they're working on all these things, and Caravan of Courage, I'm sure, and so then. Shatner's directing Star Trek 5, and he just hires, like, I don't know, his brother, someone, and that is a terrible. The special effects for that are terrible. Special Star Trek, what is Star Trek 7 First Contact, ILM, amazing special effects. The sequence where Worf, Picard, and Hawk are on the outside of the ship, they're walking around. Oh my gosh,
yes.
Still to this day is amazing. Then 1998's is Star Trek Insurrection. They did not have ILM. Again, they used Shatner's brother, and it's terrible. It's this terrible special effects. You can't. It's barely watchable because it's you have to suspend your disbelief when you're going to a movie. That's where light and magic comes from. It is a magic act. There's a prestige to it if you want to use the parlance of it. It is the thing that you believe is real while you're there. And if the special effects are doing their job, you don't think about it. The Titanic sinks. You don't think about it. You're just consumed with Jack and Rose. But when it's bad, oh my gosh, it's like you can't stop watching it. I mean, it becomes this thing that gets in the way of your enjoyment.
When you can see the effect is no longer a special effect. It is. Yeah. It is now. It's the. If anyone watched,
I love what Joanna's saying here. This is exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. If everyone ever watched How I Met Your Mother, in one of the mini episodes, there was an episode called like Glass Breaking or something, where there's those moments where you're like you go through life and you experience something a particular way, but other people see it a different way, and the moment they call it out, you can no longer, you can't ever go back. They call it the glass breaking moment. Now you can't ever go back to the way you saw it before, because now all you can see is the thing that they called out. Poorly done special effects are exactly the same way, where once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. It's just there forever, and it stands out like a bit, the old saying, a big sore thumb. Like, you can't not see it anymore, and to a degree, it kind of ruins a film, because what it does is it takes you away from focusing on the story that's being told and focusing on the functional elements of what's on the screen. And that's really too bad, because the purpose of a movie is to convey a story, and you should enjoy the story, walk out thinking about the story. Most people shouldn't really ever be thinking about the music or the special effects, because you're so wrapped up in what those things are doing to make you feel a set of ways. You just feel a certain way about the story that you were told. But when you notice those things, and I'll even say this for even good quality music, when that's not done well, even if the score is good, but it's not implemented into a movie well, it can do the same thing. If you notice it more than the story you're watching, that is a problem. They should all come together, not even equally, but in the right amounts in a recipe to convey a story that's a whole thing at the end, as opposed to, I saw these 3 or 4 individual things.
I can give you a really good example of a movie that's actually really well put together. And by the way, I think that you're hitting on this, because George Lucas talked about this. Special effects and visual effects and everything that ILM does are tools to tell a story. But if the story is not there, special effects are just there to get in the way. Mm-hmm. And the Hobbit movies are a good example of that. To borrow a line from a movie that ILM even worked on, your technicians were so focused on whether or not they didn't wonder if they should. That sequence where Legolas is jumping on the rocks as they're falling in The Hobbit, the fact that they went and recolored his eyes blue, even though Orlando Bloom has brown eyes, it's like, let it go. You're interrupting my ability to enjoy this. Yeah, man, I just firmly believe what you're talking about when it comes to this, because it should be something that it just aids in it. It should aid in the storytelling. And a movie that was an unsung hero of special effects, score, story, good acting, and I'm my hot take. It's a movie that nobody likes except for me. It's The Rocketeer. Disney's The Rocketeer.
Oh my gosh.
Is a masterpiece. And I will take everyone who wants to fight me on that. I live in Sacramento. You can come to my house. It is a masterpiece. Watch the sequence where he takes off from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles to get up onto the Hindenburg, Nazi blimp, so he can go and fight the Nazis. And that music that plays along with them, and the special effect of him flying and everything, and then Paul Sorvino saying, "Go get him, kid." I tell you, if you don't love that sequence, you don't like movies.
There's our hot take for the night. That is a good way to wrap this show up right there. Just boom.
Come to my house. I will take you on. It is a masterpiece. If I'm right, ILM made that happen. And it's a great example of, it just was ahead of maybe it was ahead of its time, in that it just was the wrong period film for that moment. Yeah. People just weren't ready for that. It's Marty McFly doing Johnny Be Good in 1955. If this isn't for you, but your kids are going to love it. That's The Rocketeer. Mm-hmm. We're going to get there one day.
Yeah, we will. I need to go back and watch that movie. I've seen that once when I was a kid, but I have not watched it since. I'll go back and watch it.
Show it to Ryson. He's going to love it. And you're going to be like, where did this come from? Why is this movie so great? Why aren't we dressing up as Rocketeer for Halloween?
Right? That helmet.
Yes. Yeah. Boba Fett, you're welcome. You are welcome. Mandalorian.
Yes.
Mandalorian, you are welcome for The Rocketeer. Again, if you want to see a movie that warms the heart, has a great message, and also some amazing acting performances by people at the tip top of their game, mm-hmm. Rocketeer. Watch
I love it. I think that's a good way to close out the show tonight. The Rocketeer. Cool, forget all this stuff. The Rocketeer. Your message for everyone watching. Go watch The Rocketeer. That's just all there is to it.
Exactly.
Awesome, dude. This has been fantastic. Thank you everyone so much for joining on TikTok, live on YouTube, and all the other places. We really appreciate it. Please subscribe on YouTube. We'd love to have you on. Be part of the community. And this is a lot of fun. Like next week, we have Andor.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be so great. Like again, prep movies. Watch any psychological thriller from the 1970s. Watch All the President's Men, or The Conversation, or 3 Days of the Condor, which has its problems, or Parallax. The Parallax View also has its problems. But again, so like trigger warnings on all those things. But you will enjoy them, and then you will be ready for Andor.
Any dystopian film too. 1984, Logan's Run. Soylent Green.
Soylent Green.
What is the other one I'm thinking of? The book burning. Fahrenheit 451. Like, pick any of these. Pick any of these stories that we just mentioned, and they will get you in the mindset for the type of thing to expect in a show like this. It's going to be absolutely brilliant.
Also, just read Fahrenheit 451. Oh, I mean, just read it. Like,
Ray Bradbury is amazing. Just go read it.
Books are great, and you can read short stories too. Sound of Thunder is a great story.
Yeah,
read them. Just
Fahrenheit 451 is not a very long book, and it's not a hard read either. It is. I read it for the first time when I was probably in middle school, and I remember like it was not one that took me much effort to get through at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, check out movies. Movies are great. Also read books,
Yeah, books are good too. We love books. We both, Ryan has a lot more books than I have. I've got new comic books. This, by the way, awesome. This Obi-Wan series that's running is really amazing, by the way.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So
right on.
Awesome, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe on the YouTubes and all that. Thanks everyone for being here the whole time on TikTok. Really appreciate it. And we will see you all very, very soon.
Hey, bye everybody.
Trying to